Welcome again to the program. I'm Joke Rogers. Let's begin with information that has come in the last couple of hours. The health ministry in Gaza says at least 20 people have been killed and many more injured in a deadly Israeli army attack near El Amal City Hospital in Khan Yunis. It comes as Israel hands over more than 80 bodies of Palestinians killed in the Gaza more than a month ago. The bodies were returned at Gaza's southeastern crossing and a mass grave was dug in Rafah to bury the remains. In the meantime, the World Food Programme says food insecurity is unprecedented in Gaza because of the Israeli bombardment. The UN agency says the entire population in the Gaza Strip faces an imminent risk of famine. The Education Ministry in Gaza also says over 4,000 students have been killed in Gaza between October 7th and December 26th. Meanwhile, Hamas and the allied Islamic Jihad have rejected Egypt's proposal that they relinquish power in the Gaza Strip in return for a permanent ceasefire. Egyptian sources say both Hamas and Islamic Jihad, which have been holding separate talks with Egyptian mediators in Cairo, had rejected offering any concessions beyond the possible release of more hostages seized on October 7, when militants broke into southern Israel, killing 1,200 people. Egypt proposed a vision rather than a concrete plan, also blocked by Qatari mediators, that would involve a ceasefire in exchange for the release of more hostages and lead to a broader agreement involving a permanent ceasefire along with an overhaul of leadership in Gaza, which is currently led by Hamas. Staying with the war in Gaza, the Hamas militant group has released footage, it says, show the group targeting Israeli military vehicles in northern Gaza. Israeli actions intensified around Christmas, particularly in the central area just south of the seasonal waterway that bisects the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army told civilians to leave the area, though many said there was no safe place to go. And the Israeli army, on its part, has released a video showing weapons found under a blanket in a child's bedroom, also in northern Gaza. A further unverified video was set to show Israeli troops operating in the same area. Israel is determined to pursue its goal of destroying Hamas despite global calls for a ceasefire in the 11-week war amid concerns the conflict could spread with US and Iran aligned forces attacking each other elsewhere in the region. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says the country has retaliated in Iraq, Yemen and Iran for attacks carried out against it as the war with Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip widens. Since Gaza hostilities erupted with a cross-border Hamas rampage on October 7, the Israeli military has said it also retaliated for knock-on attacks from Lebanon and Syria and carried out raids on Palestinian militants in the occupied West Bank. It has not published such actions in Yemen, whose Iran-aligned Houthis have carried out long-range missile and drone launches at Israel and attacked shipping in the Red Sea, nor in Iraq, where a pro-Iran militia said last week it had fired a drone at the southern Israeli port city of Eilat. Nor has Israel published any operations within Iraq, its arch-enemy and a sponsor of Hamas and Lebanon's Hezbollah. Well, discussing the attacks at the sea on ships which have no links to Israel, Chief Military Spokesperson Daniel Hagari says that it's an act of terrorism carried out by Iranian Houthi rebels. He made the remarks following an announcement of an interception of a hostile aerial target intercepted by an Israeli fighter jet over the Red Sea area. An Israeli army handout of the incident said to show a jet being intercepted. Reuters was not able to independently verify the location or the date when the video was filmed. The Houthis, which control vast amounts of territory in Yemen after years of war, have since last month fired drones and missiles at international vessels sailing through the Red Sea attacks, it says, respond to Israel's assault on the Gaza Strip. And Iran has decided to focus on retaliation for the assassination of Islamic Revolution Guards Corps veteran commander Syed Razi Mousavi in Syria. On Monday, it was announced that Mousavi, serving as a military advisor, was killed in an Israeli missile attack in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Iran's defense ministry has vowed response, calling the act a terrorist crime. President Ibrahim Raisi says Israel will pay the price for it, and that the move by Israel was another indication of its desperation, weakness, and helplessness. WHO medical team coordinator in Gaza, Sean Casey, has been monitoring the war in the Strip from the hospitals, and he says there's blood everywhere. He reports significant casualties in hospitals following an Israeli attack in Maghazi refugee camp in central Gaza on Christmas Eve. Palestinian health authorities say nearly 21,000 people have been killed in the Israeli attack, with thousands more feared buried under the rubble.
We heard about significant casualties arriving in Al Aqsa Hospital. And what we found when we got there was that there had been 100+ patients brought in with serious injuries within a very short period, within about 30 minutes, they said, plus about 100 deaths that were brought into the hospital around the same time. And we heard from one of the doctors at Al Aqsa Hospital that they had a stream of patients following that for about the next 12 hours, a significant number of patients. We've seen children, women, young men, old men and women, people bleeding out. At the same time yesterday at Al Aqsa, I saw a woman who had multiple gunshot wounds. An attempt was made to refer her, and she was referred back because she was bleeding so heavily. So, I mean, there's blood everywhere in these hospitals at the moment. We're seeing almost only trauma cases come through the door, and at a scale that's quite difficult to believe. It's a bloodbath, as we said before. It's carnage. There's nowhere actually that is safe in Gaza. We're at the UN Joint Humanitarian Operations Center right now in Rafah. Outside the door of this building, 50 meters from where I'm sitting right now, there's a camp of thousands of people who have been settled here, who have resettled here because they've lost their homes or they've fled violence. And they're in plastic sheeting shelters right outside the door. And last night we heard fighting almost all night long, with reports coming in during the day today of many injuries presenting to the hospitals here in the south.
Well, there's another pressing need in Gaza, the search for clean drinking water. Palestinians living in the largest refugee camp in the Strip say they struggle to find clean water amid a tight blockade of essential supplies and after weeks of Israeli bombardment and siege. The area we are talking about is Jablai, the largest of 8 refugee camps in Gaza. It has been home to some 116,000 registered refugees, many of whom dependent on food, medicine, and who are dependent on food, medicine, and other aid provided by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees.